All right, people, this will be a topic not easy to broach, since it is being made in support of all my Urantia brothers, who have met the same fate as I have most recently surrounding becoming demonetized with YouTube. I mean, after all, becoming demonetized sort of defeats the whole purpose of that passionate dream of having the work support itself. To help explain my point just a little bit more, I want to present a statement that I used to hear from a lot of those inexperienced counselor students that I used to be among, where they would often make this statement: I would do this for free if given the opportunity. And of course, fast forward to almost 20 years later, and all these people have full-time jobs. After all, you still have to eat and, of course, make your way to your job, which all requires money. And, of course, the time to do so. So even if you put a little thought into this, even Jesus' ministry had their own treasurer. It was Judas Iscariot, who held the money purse. So with the exception of trophy spouses and, of course, trust fund children, most of us need money to live, or at the very least, sustain our hobbies. It is often said that when politicians create new laws, to look more closely at the funding appropriated to enforce or enact those laws as to the merits of such legislation. When it comes to social media platforms such as YouTube, money is a form of gatekeeping that indirectly affects how large various channels get, which is one of the many metrics used to measure their success. As a brief example, according to Gemini, Beast Industries is a very profitable business indeed. They are currently employing roughly 750 staff members. Now, granted, I don't see Change Talk LLC reaching those numbers, or even selling candy bars for that matter, such as Mr. Beast's D's Nuts candy bar. Yep, that was a real candy bar that was discontinued in 2023 due to a trademark civil suit. But like any channel, Change Talk LLC would grow in some wonderful ways if given the resources. After all, like they say, it's the teamwork that makes the dream work. And the spreading of the fifth apocalyptic revelation does not happen in isolation. An up-and-coming successful reality I'm excited to share with everyone associated with the development of Channel 606, we'll be talking about shortly. Consequently, any form of gatekeeping or algorithmic changes a social media or vlogging platform makes most certainly has devastating consequences as to the success and future of such a religious channel. Now, I know. A lot of people that follow the Urantia Book would not call the Urantia Book a religion, since the text does not directly offer rituals, practices, or even a hierarchy to follow. I mean, does it? I mean, that's if you look at it for face value. Since if Christ Michael is indeed our absolute universe sovereign, the censors and various other celestial agents judge us on a mercy credit system following a specific code of righteous conduct. And eventually on Urantia, there'll be a temple of God, then coupling the believer's prayer and divine urging to follow our celestial spirits who actually know the law would likely be enough to shatter those who believe the Urantia Book is not a religion. So if you think about it, it's actually a religion that hasn't been completely revealed to us. At least at the present moment, with, of course, clergy being representative of planetary princes and, of course, the occasional Melchizedek. However, only a select few that know religion and the Urantia Book can understand the significance. And unfortunately, given the just over 1 million words that the Urantia Book represents, makes such a text a rough read indeed. Consequently, resources are needed to help spread the word of this new revelation and disseminate initially overwhelming amounts of information. Responding to commenters to increase algorithmic performance, video editing, and script writing, and of course the research behind all of that takes an immense amount of time and of course resources. As a brief example, I often attempt to make my videos at 4K resolution at 60 frames per second, which pushes my little 24 gigabyte graphics card to the limits, which is one of the reasons why you see that stuttering effect on parts of my videos. However, the graphics card that I actually want is a whopping $2,000 currently. Do you see the direction I'm going here? In addition, I had a viewer recently indicate that he saw a pattern when it came to me increasing the speed of my speech in my videos. I'm curious, however, when I responded, if you were surprised when he heard from me that I have to fit these videos in between my clients or holes that I have in my schedule. You know, the day job that actually helps pay my bills. Money and resources directly tie in to the quality and creative opportunities surrounding most aspects of the Urantia Book. But sadly, like many other Urantia Book content creators, I have to follow the cadence already set as financial and time-limited realities that prevents this channel from growing further. So today, after hopefully providing to you some acceptable rationales as to why money is so important to even a religious channel, we will be mentioning 10 additional YouTube Urantia Book related channels with at least 1,000 subscribers who at first glance do not appear to be monetized, evidenced by the lacking of a super thanks button, along with no ads being shown when I played their content via incognito mode. Granted, this methodology is by no means scientific, nor should be considered an official tally, as I purposely avoid connecting with these content creators for a thorough and qualitative investigation that takes those resources we discussed earlier. However, I believe showing you 10 channels that exhibits this methodology might be good enough for you to determine whether or not there's a pattern here, associated with Urantia Book scholars going up against the YouTube matrix. As a side note here, yes, there are countless other reasons why a channel would purposely choose not to be monetized. But considering the expenses associated with video recording equipment, software subscriptions, and of course operating costs, a quick 1040 IRS form is not a deterrent for most content creators attempting to get established and of course grow their channel. When first researching some of the reasons why my channel might have been demonetized, the only things that seemed to resonate mildly with me was the scrolling text that I place in the beginning of each video as a disclaimer to my audience, along with a thoughtfully placed generic B-roll content here and there. I find it interesting that well-established content creators either entirely omit these necessary disclaimers, or some of my more favorite content creators, such as Lon.tv, will painstakingly spell it out to their viewers with every video they produce. However, I kept on saying to myself that such a mild strike shouldn't be enough to entirely demonetize a channel. Or should it? This is the question that fueled the research to what I believe to be the most popular 10 YouTube channels that embrace the Urantia Book that were most similar to mine. Let me remind my viewers that compared to mainstream Christianity, the Urantia Book has a relatively small following, meaning that the channels that have over 100,000 subscribers are doing very well for themselves, unlike the fluff and clickbait channels whose subscribers amass in the millions. I should also point out that during my demonetization video, Eureka Epoch, an emerging successful YouTube channel that gives phenomenal content on parts of the Urantia Book, expressed very similar concerns surrounding meeting the same fate as myself and other channels such as the Urantia Book Network that came forward as a confirmed channel that was indeed demonetized through a similar and authentic content rationale that was divested via a public comment in that video. As a baseline here, let's use a generic religious channel such as Religion for Breakfast. That is a non-sectarian channel covering many established world religions that is currently monetized. Do you see the ad that immediately starts when I play the video in incognito mode? And of course, as I click to the side here, do you see that super thanks button that is currently displayed? As we go through later parts of this video, you will notice as we go through the brief list of Urantia Book channels that both of these features are missing associated with their content. Monetarily, this is not to say that there is no hope for these networks. Many still offer Patreon, subscription services, or even a GoFundMe page that the Urantia Book Network currently has that is approaching the $7,500 mark to assist in supporting their channel at the making of this narrative on May 1st, 2026. At this time, they had roughly 3.83 thousand subscribers. Other content creators for the Urantia Book also include Stories of Jesus in the Urantia Book with 624,000 subscribers. Truth Book having almost 24,000 subscribers, Gary Tong with just over 7.5 thousand, Urantia Book Gems with 678,000, Pado Banton, if I'm saying that name correctly, with 248,000, who is the successful reggae singer who does frequent videos on the Urantia Book, Urantia Book Films with 3.36 thousand subscribers, Urantia Film with just over 2,500 subscribers, Urantia Papers, who has 10.7 thousand subscribers, and of course, the Urantia Foundation themselves with 2.59 thousand subscribers. And what do they all have in common? All of these channels provide no direct or indirect way through YouTube of being compensated for their time and investment towards providing you quality resources on the fifth epochal revelation, which also means gratis. And for those of you that don't know Spanish, that means free. Although the payment from me would be a simple thumbs up. The evolution of the YouTube platform in 2026 has created a precarious environment where the traditional partnership between the site and its creators is becoming replaced by a more clinical, automated gatekeeping system, focusing on highly established content with a laser focus on what they deem to be authentic material. For many years, spiritual channels built their foundations on consistency, often using a broadcast model that relied on reading sacred texts over atmospheric visuals. I wish I knew a channel that did that. However, YouTube's current reuse content policy has transitioned into a sophisticated pattern recognition machine that no longer just looks for copyright violations, but actively measures the level of human transformation applied to the source material. When a creator uploads a video that follows a predictable structure, such as a static text overlay or a recurring loop of stock footage, the algorithm often flags it as being repetitive. So, of course, as a hindsight statement here, maybe it was a mistake of mine to have those closing statements that would recur every single video. Mind you that this algorithmic formula is still in its infancy, but apparently this program went off with a bang roughly around the time of April of 2026, devastating the partnership YouTube once claimed to profess with their content creators, with no handicap or additional credit systems for smaller channels still trying to make their place among the titans, which are already producing a steady income. This was particularly devastating to religious channels that focused only on one niche text, such as the Urantia Book, because the very accuracy and reverence the audience expects are interpreted by the machine as a lack of original creative input. After all, there are plenty of online blogs, vlogs, and other content that trains AI that takes pop shots at the self-proclaimed revelation, despite there being no evidence whatsoever to validate these claims. Some viewers watch for entertainment, others watch to learn, and some dedicated viewers actually watch these videos as interactive sermons on a book that they have a deep reverence for. So in totality, the algorithm is demanding a studio-level commercial presentation, which often takes full funding, favoring creators who insert their own personality, face, and unique editorial perspective over those who let the text speak for itself. This program expects, starting in day one, a stellar performance from a content provider who barely has enough time and resources to draw accurate and insightful material, often choosing to cut corners on its overall polish due to the original gatekeeping that YouTube was once performing. YouTube, if you're listening, your standards are not ludicrous. It is simply the timing in which you expect these improvements to occur. If a channel reaches the barocentric metrics to become a YouTube partner, offer an innovative coaching system, with of course differing expectations on quality when the partner reaches the 10 and 100,000 subscriber milestones. Yes, I don't think it's unreasonable that you should expect a channel with over 1 million subscribers to have polished, rehearsed content with no generic B-roll. Not so much when it comes to a solo content creator who's really operating as a one-man army, and of course has other obligations such as that job that actually pays the bills, and of course there are other obligations. Parallel to this technical hurdle is the economic wall of brand safety, which functions as a silent censor for niche topics. Modern advertisers utilize high-level exclusion lists that allow them to opt out of categories deemed sensitive or unpredictable. In the eyes of a major brand's marketing AI, metaphysical and spiritual conversations often land in the gray zone, alongside controversial political commentary. You know that famous expression, don't talk about religion and politics. Even if a channel is educational and peaceful, the proximity to non-mainstream ideas creates a perceived risk for advertisers who prefer their products to appear next to universally safe content like cooking tutorials or tech reviews. This has led to a landscape where a channel can have hundreds of thousands of devoted subscribers and yet be effectively bankrupt in terms of ad revenue, as the premium ad inventory is diverted away from spiritual niches towards more commercial, secular categories. Furthermore, these platforms have developed an additional layer of skepticism regarding the authenticity of the texts themselves that even before this recent change made things very difficult for Urantia YouTube partners. In an era where AI-generated hallucinations and digital misinformation are rampant, the fringe religious text label carries a specific burden of limited proof and countless skeptical articles of pure conjecture. Modern moderation systems often lean on a consensus reality framework, which prioritizes established academic, historical, and scientific sources. And here's that religion catch-22 thing all over again. If there's no clergy to support or ratify or endorse the Urantia Book, then is it real? As another way of saying this, if I was a minister preaching the Urantia Book on YouTube with those credentials, I'm sure the algorithm would be more decent towards me. When a text like the Urantia Book, which makes expansive claims about the origins of the universe and the hierarchy of celestial beings, is processed by these systems, it is often viewed through the lens of extraordinary claims, without a traditional institutional V-check or a backing from mainstream academia. The algorithm may treat the content as potentially inauthentic or pseudo-historical. This isn't necessarily a judgment on the spiritual truth of the material, but rather a mechanical bias towards things that can be cross-referenced with official data sets. You know, those very data sets that are offered by institutions that support various religions. And of course, the Urantia Book does not have one. And when it comes to those data sets, those are the very data sets that all too often fail to provide an accurate outline towards relative content on my videos that I am constantly correcting. The worst, most recently being a Martin Gardner video that I am still working on due to several AI chatbots falsely indicating that Mr. Gardner actually witnessed one of the sleeping subjects' sessions. Consequently, I had to find and purchase the original materials to have the video be made correctly. Did you know that one of these AI assistants that was erroring was Gemini? You know, that same company that is associated with YouTube. When asked, the bot confirmed that YouTube integrates Gemini in a few key ways that affect how creators are audited or reviewed. Are you catching what I'm drifting? And oh yeah, Gemini makes mistakes all the time when it comes to the Urantia Book. I'm constantly correcting it. This perception of inauthenticity is often reinforced by the way such texts are shared online, because many of these spiritual communities are grassroots and decentralized. Their digital footprints can appear fragmented or unverified compared to major world religions with centralized authorities, especially when their perception and dissemination of these facts is not identical to other content creators. When multiple content creators upload similar excerpts from the same text, the algorithm's originality and authenticity filters may misinterpret this community-wide devotion as a bot-like distribution of unverified claims. Consequently, the burden of authenticity is often shifted onto the individual creator. They are no longer just teachers of the text, but they must also serve as verifiable personalities who can vouch for the material with their own reputation and high production value presentation to prove that they are not part of an automated or fringe misinformation network. I would also imagine that viewers of these channels that report these videos as spam or misleading, or even post negative reviews or comments on these films likely fuels the susceptibility of this content being flagged once more. Tupac was perhaps right when he indicated, haters gonna hate. Although I do not believe that dyspeptic critics or reactive staff at YouTube are the cause of these travesties of these wonderful channels having to take a step back in their content. They are indirectly beholden to these critics as part of their algorithmic stance. When YouTube identifies the next generation of content creator as a partner, they are designating that creator as a trusted collaborator who they should be invested in developing. However, when a creator continuously pushes aside creativity for algorithmic sequences, along with the John Wick impossible tasks of even sustaining their religious channel, then they are a slave to that programming master. YouTube likely takes the stance that ignorance is no excuse for YouTube policies, ruling with an iron fist, and expecting their partners or independent contractors to train themselves as to a digital environment that YouTube creates and amends regularly. If I'm not mistaken, almost every job I've had in the past has some type of paid training situation. If YouTube does not wish to take the stance, because they're being cheap, then your consequence for a policy violation should not be so significant, and final actions perhaps taking a more dynamic approach. However, not to worry. For those of you that are tired of the slights and politics your favorite Urantia Book programming has endured, there are external options you may choose that are not constrained by this algorithm tornado that destroys creativity and the personal flair every creator brings to the table. In today's video, I'll be discussing two emerging options for those of you that wish to further your Urantia Book journey. All right, the first one, Urantia TLDR, which is Too Long Didn't Read, which is found on channel 606.com. The Urantia TLDR series on channel 606.com represents a departure from the traditional theological lecture format typically found on YouTube. While many channels approach the 2,097-page text as an academic or verse-by-verse study, this project functions more like a cinematic docuseries designed to distill the expansive Urantia cosmology into digestible, high-production narratives. It prioritizes the human-first perspective, as seen in its foundational themes like It's Okay to Be Human, which moves away from dense abstract concepts to focus on how spiritual truths apply to the messiness and resilience of everyday life. Central to this distinction is the use of collaborative cinematic storytelling. Rather than relying on static images or talking heads, Channel 606 integrates high-end 3D renderings from artists like Gary Tong and original musical scores to create an immersive environment that feels closer to a broadcast quality production. This digital storytelling approach often utilizes familiar structures seen in science and theology to frame the spiritual evolution of the individual and the planet, making the material feel more like a modern media experience rather than a religious sermon. Furthermore, this series acts as a bridge between the Urantia text and a wider world of inquiry. It frequently connects spiritual revelation with modern scientific discoveries, historical anomalies, and comparative mythology. By linking the story of Adam and Eve to genetic research and ancient legends, the content reaches beyond the existing Urantia community to engage with those interested in history and science. This methodology transforms the text from a closed system of belief into a living laboratory of ideas. Operating as part of the broader Hubcast network, the series offers a multimodal experience that a standard YouTube channel cannot easily replicate. It provides a hub for aftershows and integrated learning that connects the videos to personal growth frameworks. Ultimately, where standard channels serve as a digital classroom for students of the book, Urantia TLDR functions as a cinematic entry point, translating complex celestial themes into a format that resonates with the pace and aesthetic of modern digital culture. There is a statement on the FAQ page that indicates that a subscription fee will be incurred later in 2026, with a projected $45 annual subscription fee. The only complaint I have at this time that there is currently no Roku or Google TV channel selection option, which at first glance looks like you currently need a computer to view, likely dissuading many potential new viewers. All right, the next one, Urantia TV, which is urantia.tv. As a brief honorable mention for those of you that are bilingual in Latin American Spanish, Urantia.tv distinguishes itself from a typical YouTube channel by functioning as a professionalized, multimodal broadcast network rather than a static repository of videos. While a standard channel usually follows the schedule and singular perspective of an individual creator, such as moi, YouTube TV operates as a 24-hour community hub. Utilizing advanced management platforms, it maintains a continuous linear TV experience that synchronizes live broadcasts across various social networks, ensuring that viewers can find curated programming, music, or educational segments at any time of day. This central switchboard approach aggregates the diverse voices of the movement into a single, cohesive broadcast system. So most certainly a silver lining associated with a very dark cloud overhead of corporate decision-making over emerging content creators and those wishing to spread the Urantia Book. Urantia TLDR, Urantia TV, and Truthbook's websites are most certainly bold attempts towards partially bypassing the massive gatekeeping that these media companies have perhaps over-controlled. Make sure you check out their content and, of course, support their efforts. And with that said, we at Change.org LLC will no longer use that sign-off message we typically give you at the end of every video and just say goodbye for now.